Well, hey everybody, it's Chris DeFirio with Keys to the Shop. Welcome to another edition of Shift Break. Today's episode is brought to you by the wonderful folks over at La Marzocco. They've been making espresso machines by hand since 1927 in Florence, Italy, and their name is synonymous with quality, dependability, and innovation. Machines like the KB90 espresso machine, straight-in locking portafilters for ergonomics, auto flush in the group heads for cleanliness. Got the Linea Classic, which is obviously classic, and then you've got the Linea PB with all the technology of today to have that classic profile, but just ultimate control of the extraction. The Leva espresso machine for a more traditional manual feel, and everywhere in between. So if you're looking for a great espresso machine for your cafe and you want to upgrade from what you have or start off on the right foot with the best there is, go to lamarzocousa.com or reach out, info@lamarzocousa.com, and their sales folks will get you hooked up with the right equipment for your situation. Can't recommend them highly enough. lamarzocousa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by folks who really believe that a business is made not just on large pieces of equipment, but on small things as well. Small wares are one of those things that you end up sometimes thinking like, well, where are we going to get this stuff? It was just a last minute purchase. And sometimes you get good things and sometimes you get bad things. Small wares need to be dependable, made to just work. And that's exactly what rattleware.com does. So go to rattleware.com and look for all of your smallware needs on that website. They've been around for a very long time. I've got some pretty old Rattleware stuff, still amazing, and they're out there to help you succeed with the big picture using small wares. They just like supporting the business with what they offer. So again, if you're looking for small wares for your next cafe, for your new cafe, go ahead and check out rattleware.com. Okay, so everyone, today we are going to be talking about training. We're going to talk about what you should expect when it comes to how long somebody takes to get trained. This is a question you see online all the time. Should it take this long for this person to become a trained barista? And the question often is based on what the person believes is a too long of a period of time. If they're asking the question, usually it's because they think this barista is just not getting it. What should I do? And if you dig deep enough into the question, oftentimes there are some things that are like, if you look at the context, the person who's asking the question often has not really provided as much of a structure or responsible resourcing as they could have for their staff. And we've talked about this before with sink or swim training and trial by fire onboarding and all of these ideas of how if the person's the right person, they're just going to fit. And there's not much we need to do. We just need to like plop them into the chaos of the cafe, and they're going to naturally just become adept. And that's going to prove our prowess in choosing in some spooky way the right person. And then it's also going to prove to them that they belong there and they're going to be secure, functioning baristas. There's this, like I said, there's this spooky logic that gets applied to barista training where we put people through this gauntlet and expect them to come out the other side having been, trained. And honestly, there is way more hand holding, repetition, structure, and reinforcement and continual coaching than I think most people are comfortable with. And they almost feel as though that's not what I signed up for. Like, I don't want to have to tell people what to do and how to do it. But that's exactly what being a good manager and a good boss is. And it's not micromanagement. See, for reference, it's okay to be the boss. I have it right here on the shelf back here for those of you on YouTube that can see me talking. It is not your goal. It should not be your goal to pull yourself out of the communication game and get people who don't need guidance. Everybody needs guidance. It's just how much is realistic? How much can you afford, in fact, to have a barista continually be trained outside of normal hours versus the hours that they're scheduled to work. Because I do believe you need training outside of normal hours to focus the attention of the trainee on a topic where their mind is a little bit more likely to absorb the specialized information rather than always on shift, in where you really cut down the percentage of retained information because there's that whole fight or flight and the attention is divided across 1,000 different things. Whereas if you have a lab, which God bless you if you have a lab, that's pretty cool. But also, we have another shift break coming out about that. So you want to stay tuned. But if you don't have a lab and you have the opportunity to just be an extra on shift to, work with somebody side by side in a structured way, what we call like a structured shadow shift or a focused training session for a couple of hours on a very specific set of topics, that's going to yield the best result. Kind of a combination of both, a back and forth of focus time, on shift shadow shifting with a lot of coaching and reinforcement of what you learned during that focus time. And I recommend people have at least up to 10, even 12 2 to 3 hour sessions like that, where there is a 2 to 3 hour focused session and a 2 to 3 hour period of focused shadow shift, where it's not the kind of traditional shadow shift you think about where the person is just like told, hey, go follow this person around and learn by osmosis and do what they do, and then you should be good. That's no good. That does not work. And I think a lot of the frustration that people feel, well, people are just not getting it, is because they weren't given it to begin with. They were given like a blank book to study for a test that has a ton of specific questions. But like we say, you can't have detail oriented people if you don't orient them to detail. That includes expectations, how to make the drinks, how to clean, how to do an open and close and mid shift, and all this other stuff. So if you want people to, get up to speed quickly, you've got to have a very well cultivated and effective system of onboarding and training that puts them in the learning mode, and that you personally have sort of planned a certain amount of time of your life, or your trainers or your managers, you have worked with them to create margin in their work to relatively comfortably take on this training and onboarding of this barista in a way that thoroughly prepares them. So that's a huge caveat that I want to talk about or mention before I tell you how long it should take to train a barista. Because if you don't have those things in place, it's easy to just say, well, that person's not the right fit, because we've just skipped over the whole thing where it's up to us to provide the resourcing and tools for success. And oftentimes we're trying to get out of doing those things by blaming it on the capacity or aptitude of the barista. So what I'll say about how long it should take to train somebody, listen, if you have all those things in place and you invest a good amount of energy and training and specificity and follow-up and face-to-face time, and you're comfortable with that, then I think you need to think about, well, maybe something is going on here after about a month, maybe after even 2 months. If somebody is just forgetting drinks all the time and they just are not applying themselves to the recipes in the very basics of the business, they can't remember where the latte button is even after 3 weeks of having been told what the book, where the button is, or what the recipe is for the most popular beverages. These are obvious signs that this person is not necessarily lacking resource. They're lacking personal engagement with the job itself. But you have to handle that situation case by case. And don't just say if the person is not getting it after a month with the system that we have, that we haven't examined, that we haven't really tailored and cultivated. in that they're just not going to work out. Because again, a lot of times what we do is we have like 2 or 3 days of orientation, and then we just plug them into the machine. And after a month, we check back in on them, and their coworkers have complaints about them. We look at and we're like, why are they doing that? But we haven't really put the effort into training them that we think we did. And you do need to apply that effort along with making sure that they understand you have their best interest in mind by equipping them with that information and training. Those are the proper tools to get people to stay not only motivated to continue facing the difficulty of learning new tasks, but also that they will become the type of people who then pass on that kind of equipping to others when the opportunity arises. So it becomes this, you know, virtuous cycle of we do for each other what was done for us. And so that is what you want to cultivate. So after a month or so, if somebody's really just forgetting the basics and they're not performing the job, and sometimes they're even defiant towards the job, those are behavioral traits of the individual, you know, past a reasonable expectation of the business to invest into that person. You don't really have to prop people up who refuse to, you know, take responsibility for themselves. There's a whole lot of that going on, but I would caution you that not every case is a case of that. Even though it's tempting to think so, do your due diligence and audit your systems to figure out, am I doing what's needed and what we can do? And then you have to ask yourself, is this person actually showing up for the work? And if they're not, again, you have to address this by saying either it's not going to work out, or coach them into a higher level of performance. And if they refuse to be helped, then you've got to show them the door eventually, because there isn't just an endless sacrifice of time and energy and investment that you have to offer each person, but there is a reasonable level of very deep, rich, well cultivated, and structured resource that you should offer to everybody. And you should know what that is before you start trying to address these cases as though they are just like not the right baristas or not the right fit. So I hope that makes sense. It's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. That's how long it should take to train somebody, because people are slightly different. But you should expect somebody with that robust system we talked about to be pretty comfortable within a couple months or so behind the bar, but at least have some kind of a serviceable and I would say practical knowledge and skill level after a month of investment and resourcing. And yeah, that's kind of the approach that I would take with it. So if you go to the links in the show notes that talks about related episodes and such, you definitely need to do that. Especially we're talking about what training produces. We're talking about systems and onboarding. That's going to help really round out this topic for you as you approach it. Honestly, 2025 needs to be the year where you reassess your resourcing, and I think this is a great way to do it. So follow the notes, listen to those episodes, let me know what you think, and I will see you here next week on another edition of Shift Break, from keys to the shop.